Hello, Carrots here. Welcome to episode 11 of Oscar's Childhood. Oscar's arrived at the boarding school in Chocolate Cake Island, and then it occurred to me we hadn't really discussed where Elouise came from. Now, Elouise is the sim who turned up at Oscar's place to rescue him when the meteors struck his home in Irwin. Oscar was in a lot of trouble, of course, and Elouise had got the signal to rush off to Irwin. But she had no clue what she was supposed to do when she got there. It was just a mysterious sort of a command. You'll know what you need to do when you find out what needs to be done. She went straight to the house that was burning. There was only one house burning in the whole of the town. There were lots of other places that had been struck by meteors, but only one house was actually on fire. So she went there, but there was nobody around. So she was still clueless as to why she was there. She couldn't fight the fire, which was too much fire happening. So then she went into town to have a look around to see if she could find out if there was something going on in the town itself that might give her a clue. Once she got into town, she found bits of meteors scattered all around the city hall. Still totally confused, she started building a snowman to give herself some time to think. What was she here for? What was she supposed to be doing? There had obviously been 2 meteor strikes on City Hall. Neither of them hit the actual building, but there was lots of bits of meteor lying around, and she started collecting them. And then she changed her mind and stopped collecting them. In the end, with all of the small and large bits of meteor lying around, she only collected 2 pieces. Then her mind was made up. Whatever she was here to do, she was sure it had something to do with that burning house. She went back to the burning house. This time she decided she'd go inside just to make sure that there was nobody in there. She rang the doorbell and waited for a while, and then she just went in. She didn't go in the front door. There was too many meteors and too much flames there, but this little side door looked safer. She went downstairs, and that was the living area. And again, she needed to think, because there was no one around. So she just stayed there for a bit and played the guitar while she thought about her next move. And unknown to each other, there was another shocked, lonely figure sitting in the snow reading a book. It was one of Oscar's sisters. At least one member of Oscar's family had survived. Up until this point, Elouise had been living happily in the boarding school at Moonfall Island. Now, this is a new build of mine. I think I've showed pictures of it on the forums. I like it and I really wanted to keep it in the game. It could come in useful and actually be in gameplay at some point, but initially it is simply a place for me to put Sims that I don't want to play with right now, but I'd like to keep. And since it's in a world that I'm not playing, none of them will actually age or progress in anything until I play this world. And there's about 12 or 13 or 14 different worlds in this big game now, and Moonfall Island is one of my recent additions. It was a brand new building, had never been used as a boarding school, but it did have a few new Sims living in it, and all of them were new Sims. All except 1 or 2 are brand new Sims, without any skills whatsoever. The 2 exceptions, well, we'll meet them as we go along. We'll just have a very quick look through the boarding school. The top floor is completely empty. I've not given them access to the roof. The second top floor is almost completely empty. It's just got a few little seats and a fairy house. We do have 1 fairy living in this house at the moment. This is the main area. I've done most of my decorating on this floor, and I think it's pretty much finished. It's got the kitchen and a space for them to eat. Big verandas. I find in my boarding schools the Sims like to sit outside at those tables, and that's the main entrance, the front entrance to the boarding school. This is the 3rd level, whether you're counting from the top or from the bottom, because this school's got no basement yet. It's really still a work in progress, but it's at the point where I can allow Sims to live in it. And on the level below, this is where the toddlers will be doing their toddler training, and I think we've got a fairy sleeping in that fairy house at the moment. So I've set this up as a place for the toddlers. We don't have any toddlers yet, and we may not. It depends if I move everybody from Chocolate Cake Island or not. It's possible I might do that. There's bedrooms on this level as well. All those doors on the other side of the room there, they face into the hill. So the bedrooms don't have any windows, but they do have beds in them. There's a bookcase for the children. So we've got places set up for children and for toddlers, and also for the babysitters, the nursemaids or whatever we call them, the young young adults who live here and who will take care of any of the children who may move here eventually. By children, I mean toddlers, children or teens. I'm not expecting to have any babies here, and young adults will undoubtedly be cycled through as well, because while the young adults are here being babysitters or nannies, they are also allowed to skill. So I'll put any unskilled new Sims in here as well, which is why I placed brand new Sims here. At this point, I've got some skilling items on the ground floor, but I'm thinking of moving them up to the empty second top level and reserving this space for entertainment. So that's it. We've seen the boarding school, well, enough of it at least, for you to get a really good idea of what's there. Now we'll meet the Sims, or the residents. Berry Bombay is a witch, and she was made for no particular reason other than I felt like making a new Sim. So since I had her, she's in the boarding school. She'll be used. Coral Carpenter, I was trying again to make myself another self-Sim. Didn't really work out, but she's useful as well. Elouise is another one like Berry. I just made her for the fun of making a Sim, and now she's in the game. And she's the one who's going to rescue Oscar, the one this is all about. Harvey Miller, I was trying to make somebody who looked a bit different from usual. No particular purpose, but he's been put in the school as well. Isabel Howe. Now she's one who I think I made quite some time ago when I was making a lot of Sims just to experiment with new skins and hair. Jack Hobbs is not a new Sim, he's a very old Sim. He lives in my library, he's got 14 million simoleons to his name, and that's why he gets used. He is the one I use when I need to buy something big. We needed a lot of his money to be able to buy the boarding school, so he was the first one I put in here. He's a Sim that I tend to avoid playing because I dislike the hair that I'd given him. So when I put him into this particular school, I gave him a makeover. He only had a hair and skin anyway, so he got new skin, new hair, and now I think he's quite gorgeous. He's got skills, I just don't know how many he's got. Kaylee Flower is a fairy, and she's a made-over version of Paula Flower. She has some skills that she inherited from Paula, otherwise she's a brand new Sim. There are other Sims living at the boarding school. The one you can see there on screen at the moment with the hat on is Gaylord Coffee, the father of Gabias. Now, I've resurrected Gaylord because Gabias's ghost vanished from my game, and I need to hold the family trees, and I was frightened that he might drop off the family tree as well. So I've got Gaylord in this game to hold the family trees together, all of the descendants of Gabias. Of course, when you play in Sunset Valley and starting a brand new game, you'll often get a notification that Gaylord Coffee had just died from starvation, and you'll find his tombstone in the graveyard in Sunset Valley. Elouise isn't at home. She is in the fortune-telling career, and she works in the Gypsy Caravan. The Gypsy Caravan is on the supernatural lot that I made with the Gypsy Caravan, the Vault of Antiquity, and the Arboretum in it. And I've put that lot right close to the boarding school, so Elouise doesn't have very far to go home. You can see it there just through the trees. There's a Fountain of Youth there as well, just behind the Vault of Antiquity. So it's the end of the working day for Elouise, and she runs off home. Now we can see where she lives, and she could easily run directly to it from where she is, but no, she needs to catch the carpool home. So she runs away from the house, jumps into the car then turns around and drives her down the road away from the boarding school, and then she hops out and runs home. That road there that she just ran out of goes down to Dan Steele's place. It's a road that goes along the beach. Now that was little Petal just riding home on a bicycle. She is a child now in this particular game. She was actually born in the Perfect Genetics Challenge, and when she was a toddler I moved her in with the Cake Island Mermaids because I just wanted an extra plant sim in Cake Island at the time. And now I've merged all of the sims from the Cake Island Mermaids game into this game, and some of the mermaids are living in this world, but I decided to put Petal in the boarding school. So she's the first child at the boarding school. There are a few other children here at the moment as well, but they are from the boarding school on Chocolate Cake Island. I needed to move a few out, and I put them here into this boarding school. And the reason I had to move them out of Chocolate Cake Island was I had about 30 or more sims in the household, and it was very difficult to even open up world. Crashed many times when I went onto the lot. So the solution was obviously to get rid of some of the sims. And I didn't want to send them home to their families in case I forgot about them and they aged up without getting any skills. So they went to this boarding school where they will be in a sort of suspended animation until I'm ready to play with them, because if If I'm not playing this world, and I won't be, the Sims in it won't age or advance at all until I'm ready for them, and I'll come and get them at that point. That's Coral. She was my most recent attempt at trying to make a Sim self, a much younger Sim self. But again, she doesn't look much like me. I'm a complete failure at trying to make something that looks like me. I can paint a likeness, but I can't make a Sim that's a real likeness. Isabella Howe is another brand new Sim, and she's in the film career. Now this is interesting. Back at the Supernatural Park, a child is not in my household. That's Greg Steele, one of Dan Steele's children. And I didn't realise that children who are not under my control would autonomously go and visit the Vault of Antiquity. And then I start getting pop-ups for his adventure to say which way he's going to go next. I think there might be a tiny glitch in this game, and that is Harvey Miller, and he is in the household, and he's also in the fortune-telling career. Here's another new Sim that has no skills yet. Elouise left work early because she had the sudden feeling that there was something urgently wrong that she had to fix, but she's still not sure what it is she's got to do. When she got home, she checked the mail immediately, but there was nothing there to help, and then she bumped into Coral, who wanted to have a chat about her art. So Elouise stopped for a little conversation, hoping that something might come to her if she just didn't have her mind fixed totally on trying to work out what was going on and what it was she had to do. Just as Harvey came home, Elouise had a sense that she had an urgent need to visit a place she'd never heard of before. It was the world of Irwin. She stood there, pondering why. But the urge was so strong that she couldn't resist it, and she'd had this sort of thing happen to her before and realised that it was always good advice coming from somewhere. She didn't know where it came from, but she was able to receive it, and she chose to do something about it. She acted on her instincts, and she dialed up a ticket to Irwin and left immediately, wondering what she would find when she got there and how she would deal with it. Now that little girl is from Barnacle Bay. She is one of the Sims who I moved from the boarding school at Chocolate Cake Island. She's a permanent resident at the boarding school. She doesn't have anybody in her family tree other than herself. And somehow or other she just ended up in another household. I think it was the Goldbeard household, I'm not sure. So I decided when I took her to the boarding school and trained her that once she'd finished her childhood skills, I just kept her and didn't send her back to Barnacle Bay. And we've already seen what happened when she arrived in Irwin. She looked around town for a while before venturing out to that burning house. And the last we saw of her in Irwin, she was in the basement of that house playing her guitar, just wondering what she needed to do next. Eventually, she got the idea that perhaps she should go upstairs and check outside again to see if anybody had turned up yet. And when she got there, she saw that, yes, there was somebody there. And this time, she understood what she was there to do, because he was a child crying over his parents' grave. He was all alone, and she just knew immediately what she had to do. She sent him inside to have a shower first, and when he came back out, she dialed up her travel plans for the two of them to travel to Chocolate Cake Island, where Elouise knew there was an excellent boarding school with a place for him. And they set off together for the boarding school in Chocolate Cake Island. The journey was quite quick, and they arrived at the Chocolate Cake Island boarding school just as the rest of the children who already lived there were heading off to school. Left alone for the day, with no children to talk to, Oscar sat and played with his imaginary friend. This was familiar to him because he was accustomed to being the only child in the household, but the difference this time is the other children who were at home with him were toddlers, and he'd never come across toddlers before. The last time there'd been toddlers at his home, he was the toddler. So Oscar's in for lots of new experiences at the boarding school at Chocolate Cake Island. Elouise made herself busy upstairs in the nursery. There was one new toddler, little Gator Wolf. He was from Moonlit Falls, and he needed all of his skills. It was the chest, so she taught him to walk. The others had almost completed their toddler training. They'd been at the boarding school for a while, and they were reading their toddler books. They were trying really hard to get these toddlers trained as quickly as possible so they could go home to make room in the boarding school, which was completely overcrowded at that point. Eventually, Oscar went outside to see what he could see, and he found a sand pit at the back of the boarding school. There's actually several sand pits at the back of the boarding school, as well as swings and a trampoline. He'd never had a sand pit to play in before, and there was a lot of gnomes living at this boarding school as well. Oscar'd never had gnomes before. The ground, he soon discovered in Chocolate Cake Island, was all brown, just like a chocolate cake, with only a few patches of grass here and there. The hills were like huge scoops of multicoloured chocolate chip ice cream. Oscar was amazed at what he found around him. He'd never seen so much playground equipment or such a beautiful, unusually coloured world. He was thinking he might be happy here, but he still missed his family terribly. He hoped that he'd get to know the other children, because in Irwin there hadn't been any other children for him to play with or get to know, so it was all new to him. And there were magical trees growing out the front of the boarding school, and across the road he would still need to explore the boarding school garden, which was a huge building across the street from where they lived. And the teens in the boarding school would go to that garden each day until they had their gardening skill up to level 7. And there were things on the roof of the garden across the street. And it was such a beautiful garden. But Oscar hadn't been in there yet. This is something he would explore in his future. Bruce was across the road already. He was one of the babysitters. He's married, his wife and his little son are living at the boarding school at the moment. Bruce is one of my old Sims, one of my old favourites that I haven't played with for many years. At one stage, every single game for about a year had Bruce in it. And then I thought, I've got to start playing with different Sims. And that's when I put him away and left him in my library until I added him to Moonlit Falls world with his wife. And they had a baby boy who is now a toddler, and they're all living in the boarding school. Bruce is usually my gardening Sim. He's got a clone now in the big glass house in Dark Harbour. You would have seen them if you watched the McFluff story, Generation 1. I changed his name and gave him a slightly different look. But that's his brother. Back at the school, some of the children hadn't come home yet. That is Mike and Eric playing in the sand pit next to the school. Mike is going to play with Oscar for a little while before Elouise takes him back to his parents, who live in Lucky Palms. And we'll see Elouise taking him back to Lucky Palms, and we'll meet his parents and his family. But this is just a little bit more of some of the buildings that are in Chocolate Cake Island. It's an unpopulated world when I got it, and I've added most of the buildings. Some of the buildings were there already, but most of them were not. I just put in a few things and left it for the boarding school. Now here we are. Some of the children have already come home from school, and they're sitting around the dining table doing their homework. The children who are currently at the boarding school include Reardon Methrelin from Dragon Valley, Cricket Irwin from Lucky Palms, Wilhelmina Wolf, she's a werewolf and is from Moonlit Falls, Mara Nix from Moonlit Falls, Mark Hansen from Lucky Palms. Mark is a grandson of Marty, who was the first husband of Patience. Oscar Jacobson from Irwin, we all know Oscar. Kathleen Coffey from Lucky Palms, another granddaughter of Marty, and her mother is Hayley, who you all know quite well by now. And Alison Wilson from Lucky Palms. Alison's parents are Tammy Fields and Jebediah Wilson, and Tammy is the half-sister of Kathleen's mother, Hayley, making Kathleen and Alison cousins. And Mike and Kathleen are cousins also, but Mike is not Alison's cousin. And there are 8 children, plus 4 teens and 8 toddlers. We'll meet the teens and the toddlers in another episode. And there are also 4 young adults, plus 2 dogs. It's all a bit chaotic in the boarding school at the moment, because they haven't been played for quite a while. And Serena Abe, who's just walked out the door, she's going to her part-time job, which I don't really want her to have. And Eric has just walked in the door. That's Eric, he's a teen now. And the teen girl with the plaits on the left there, that's Faith McDuff. I think she's from Moonlit Falls. Eric's parents are living in Lucky Palms at the moment. A lot of Patience's children and their offspring are in Lucky Palms, but they're all over the place. Eric's grandmother is Patience, and his grandfather is Goodbye's Coffee. Serena Abe and Coral Goldbeard are both from Barnacle Bay. Eric's little sister Suzanne is a toddler. She's upstairs in the nursery. She is living at the boarding school too. Eric headed over to the garden to do some gardening. He needs to get his gardening skill up from 0 to 7 before he's allowed to age up to young adult. But there's going to be lots of fun and games with Eric and Oscar before that happens. That's Bruce Winterbottom there that you can see gardening at the moment. Eric just got a new skill off the Tree of Prosperity, but he's got so many other skills already that he acquired as a child that it's difficult to work out which one he just got. Actually, it's impossible to work it out. By the way, Eric's parents, Eric and Susanna's parents, are Percy Coffey, and Lorna McCain is from Dragon Valley, which explains their pointy ears. Meanwhile, the household dog, Snow, has gone across the road to have a swim in the local pool. Now, this pool came with the Katy Perry Sweet Treat stuff pack. The other dog you can see running around in the background is Bandit Thompson, who's another household dog. Back in the nursery, Erica Wolf is teaching her son Gator how to talk. They're both werewolves and they're from Moonlit Falls. I brought Erica with her children because she would otherwise have been left at home alone, and she has no skills, so I thought, well, she can learn something at the boarding school while she teaches her children. Mike Hansen hasn't come home yet. He's still playing in the sand pit at school. I'll have to tell him to go home, I think, because I want him to get to play with Oscar for a while before I send him back to his parents. And also, I don't want him to get into trouble with the police for being out after curfew. It's not that late yet, but that's quite a machine he's come home on. I haven't seen a sim ride that thing before. I wonder where he got it. He got to go safely home to the boarding school anyway. There he is inside. That's Coral Goldbeard with the blonde hair walking away, and Elouise is off there in the distance a bit. And here's Oscar, just come home from wherever he's been. He must have been out in the sand pit, I think, at the back. He hasn't left the lot. At least I don't think he's left the lot. Haven't noticed. I'll have to get Oscar playing with Mike for a little while. Mike's gone upstairs to one of the bedrooms, so I'll send Oscar up there to start talking to him. And look, that's Carly. She's flaked out or something. I wonder if she's a coward, because I don't know why she'd be lying on the floor snoring. So Oscar and Mike are getting to know each other in somebody's bedroom. There's a whole lot of bedrooms on this level. That's Carly. She's woken up. It's very difficult to get the whole sim in the picture because the bedrooms are just so small. I prefer to keep them out of the bedrooms when I'm actually getting a video, trying to record a video, because they are just so hard. So I like to have walls up. With walls down, it's a lot easier, but then you're not actually realising that you're confined to the bedroom. So far, Oscar seems to be settling in quite well. He's chatting happily with both Mike and Carly. He seems to be mostly chatting with Carly, so I've decided that it's time he concentrated on Mike, because Mike has to go home soon, back to Lucky Palms. So here they are. They're going to have a little game of rock, paper, scissors, and then I'll get them to run around outside for a while, and then I'll tell Elouise to take Mike back home to Lucky Palms. I don't think there's going to be enough time for Mike and Oscar to get to know each other really well, but at least they've been introduced, and their friendship will decrease over time. So even if I made them best friends, by the time Oscar goes to meet up with Mike again, they will still be acquaintances again. So I won't take all the time needed to get them as best friends just at this point. I need to get less sims in this lot to get rid of the lag that's happening because of the overpopulation. At least it's playable now, if you can stand the lag. Previously, it just would crash. It took me hours of reloading and having the graphics turned down dramatically just to get the 3 or 4 sims out of it and into the boarding school in Moonfall Island. Looks like Mara's having some fun on the spring rider. I find that's a popular spring rider in this boarding school. Children often ride it autonomously. It's getting dark outside and the boys are still trying to play tag, although they seem to have a very strange way of doing it. I think there's a bit of a glitch going on there, so it's not going to last much longer. I'm going to have to put a stop to it, and we'll just take Mike home because they know each other quite well now. I think they'll recognise each other next time they meet up. The boys can say their farewells now and we'll be heading off to Lucky Palms. Elouise will take Mike and Snow to Lucky Palms and then she'll come back without them. This seems like a good spot to end the video, so thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next episode when Mike travels home to join his parents again. Bye bye for now. Happy simming!